The Swahili language in Eastern and Central Africa. Along the east coast of Africa, an Indian Ocean trade conducted by Bantu-speaking peoples existed about 2,000 years ago, and it received a great impetus from the Arabs after the rise of Islam in the 7th century. The Bantu-speaking Africans were called Swahili by the visiting Arabs, and the name remained attached to them and to their descendants of mixed Bantu-Arab stock, and to their language, now the common language of East Africa. In the 9th-10th centuries the Swahili adopted Islam, and, as the Muslim power and influence spread to all the lands bordering the Arabian Sea and the Indian Ocean, so a string of trading city-states arose on the east coast of Africa, from Somalia in the north to Mozambique in the south. By the 13th century these cities were entering a golden age of prosperity, which lasted throughout the 14th and 15th centuries. Ships from all over the Eastern world, India, Malaysia, Indonesia, and as far as China, were welcomed in their harbors, bringing silk and cotton cloth, pottery, porcelain and beads in exchange for gold and ivory. Among the most important and powerful of these ports were Mogadishu, in Somalia, Malindi and Mombasa, in Kenya, Zanzibar and Kilwa, in Tanzania. The most famous and imposing was Kilwa, situated on a small island. Kilwa became the main center of the East African gold and ivory trade. A finely built city was presided over by the king of Kilwa in his luxurious clifftop palace. From the wealth derived from control of the gold trade the king minted a currency of his own. Much of the gold for this trade came from the inland people of Zimbabwe, the Shona tribes of the Bantu-speaking peoples. This export trade may have started in about the 10th century, by when the Shona had probably been settled in the Zimbabwe region for 1,000 years, raising crops and cattle and becoming skilled miners and iron workers. Between the 12th to 14th centuries they built the city of Great Zimbabwe, of which the surrounding stone wall, probably completed about 1400, still survives. In the northeast in the 16th century the Somalis spread southwards beyond Mogadishu, and transferred their capital to Harar, now in Ethiopia. In the 17th century they, and the Ethiopians were harassed by the Galas, another Hamitic people with an infusion of Negro blood, who inhabit northern Kenya and some of southeastern Ethiopia. Though driven by the Somalia from Somalia, the Galas so weakened the kingdom of Adel that it broke up into a number of small states, Zila becoming a dependency of Yemen. During this period there were many other Bantu kingdoms in Central Africa, present-day Zaire, Uganda, Zambia and Angola. The kingdoms of Luba and Lunda and the grasslands of the Upper Congo Basin joined in trade with the west coast as well as with the east. The farming people of the kingdom of Kazembe, in Katanga in southern Zaire, appear to have led an untroubled existence until the middle of the 19th century, and contributed much to African culture in art, music and dancing. The Katanga region was noted for copper production, and the Malawi on the western shore of Lake Nyasa were famous for iron smelting. In the East African highlands around Lakes Victoria and Tanganyika were the kingdoms of Buganda, Rwanda, and Burundi. In Angola two large kingdoms had been formed by about 1400, the kingdoms of Congo, along the lower Congo River, and Ndongo. To complete the picture of East Africa, the early inhabitants of the island of Madagascar, the Malagasy, are thought to have been of Polynesian and Indonesian origin. Later, Indians, Arabs and Swahili arrived, and slaves from Africa. A tribal organization probably continued until late in the 16th century, when small kingdoms began to be formed. In the 17th and 18th centuries Madagascar was the haunt of many pirates. Apart from all these African kingdoms there were many peoples in Africa who had not reached this stage of political organization, or saw no necessity for it. Among these, in East Africa, were the Kikuyu of the Kenya highlands and the Luo of Kenya and Uganda, and the nomadic Maasai of Kenya and Tanganyika. The Hamitic Somalis are thought to have come from Yemen and southern Arabia and perhaps the 8th century AD they settled in the Zila area, on the Gulf of Aden, and their history was greatly influenced by neighboring Ethiopia. By the 13th century they had formed a number of Muslim kingdoms, of which the strongest was the Kingdom of Adel. In the following 2 centuries there were many wars between the Somali states and Ethiopia, resulting in most of them, but not Adel, becoming vassals of the Ethiopians. From this term was derived the European name Monomatapa for the Shona Empire.